Bono and Miss Winnie from the University of Science Malaysia, University Science Malaysia, and all of these things, guests and participants, both in here and also in the Zoom meeting. So today we have our events hybrid in Zoom meeting and in the Faculty of Psychology. Okay, before we begin, let us take a moment to pray. Pray begins. Pray finish. To formally commence today's event, we would like to invite the Dean of the Faculty of Psychology, Mr. Rahmat Hidayat, to deliver his opening remarks and officially open this event. Mr. Rahmat, the floor is yours.
Is it good for the camera, or should I better in here? Because our event this morning, your lectures is recorded, and with your consent, we will upload it in our YouTube channel. So other prospective participant attendants will still be able to learn from your lectures, even though they are not present in here. That's also for the sake of the documentary, if you are giving consent to that. And I will speak my remarks partly and mostly in Bahasa Indonesia. A bit tired to sing in English. So, selamat pagi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Alhamdulillah pagi ini sangat membahagiakan, terutama dengan kehadiran with the presence of Dr. Suzanna Bono from University Sains Malaysia. Welcome to the faculty, welcome to the University, Universitas Gadjah Mada, and welcome to Jogja. Ini kesempatan yang sangat baik kita bisa bertemu, bertatap muka, dan bertukar pemikiran sebagai bagian di our academic exchange between our institution, sharing knowledge, sharing visions, sharing commitment untuk pengembangan psikologi, baik dari aspek sains maupun aspek penerapannya untuk pemecahan masalah-masalah dan kebutuhan masyarakat. Dan topik pagi ini amat sangat tepat dengan situasi kita, psychological resilience and social cohesion in crisis. Krisis, berbagai situasi selalu kita hadapi, terutama di Indonesia, especially Indonesia, with such a large geographical span and the characteristic of the archipelagic nations, as well as the geological makeup of our country. Natural disaster which create crisis is an often occurrence in our country. So once an officer from the World Health Organization remarks that if you are trying to find supermarket for disaster, then Indonesia should be your destinations. Indonesia is like a supermarket in terms of disaster. You can find all type of disaster except maybe ones related to the storm and ice, especially ice-related disaster. You can find earthquake, you can find floods, tsunami, large-scale volcanic eruption, fire, and everything else, including the social disaster, conflicts, and war. So, and each of these disaster, both man-made and natural disaster, always creates crisis, and psychology is always expected to be able to respond to it. But responding to the ongoing crisis is not, it's only one way to cope with this, but it always be too late to respond to the crisis that has been taking place. The other approach, very important one, is to develop, to understand the resilience and to develop the resilience capacity of the community affected by the crisis. So With that perspective, I think, and I'm sure the topic this morning is very important for us. So again, thank you so much for the sharing. And thank you also for the initiations of and the continual effort started by Dr. Suzanna Bono to improve and to increase and to develop academic exchange between us. Hopefully dari seminar pagi ini akan berlanjut terus dengan pertukaran akademik, dengan kerjasama yang lebih erat, dengan kolaborasi yang lebih kuat antara kita, Universitas Gadjah Mada, dengan University Sains Malaysia. Dan sekali lagi terima kasih. Mohon maaf untuk segala kekurangan di dalam penyambutan Ibu Suzanna Bono di Fakultas Psikologi UGM. Dan dengan demikian event ini saya nyatakan dibuka. Bismillah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Please stay in here, Pak Rahmat. Yeah. We will now proceed with signing of letter of intent between Faculty of Psychology, Universitas Gadjah Mada, and School of Social Science, University Sains Malaysia, representing UGM, Faculty of Psychology, UGM will be the Dean, Mr. Rahmat, and we would like to invite Dr. Suzanna as the representation from University Sains Malaysia. Thank you, Dr. Ahmad and Dr. Suzanna. We will proceed with a presenting of a token of appreciation from the Faculty of Psychology to Dr. Suzanna Bono. Please come forward again. We would like to invite the Vice Dean. Oh, enggak. Oh no. Pradytia. Oh, okay. Okay. It's just over years. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Ahmad, Dr. Suzanna, and Dr. Pradytia. Okay, now we will begin the Cross-Cultural Exchange Forum. This is a collaboration between Center for Indigenous and Cultural Psychology, Universitas Gadjah Mada, and the School of Social Science, University Sains Malaysia. Today, we are honored to welcome two of our distinguished speakers who will be sharing their insight on the topic of psychological resilience and social cohesion in crisis. We have Dr. Pradytia Putri Pertiwi from the Universitas Gadjah Mada and Dr. Suzanna Bono from University Sains Malaysia. And before we begin, I would like to read their CV, their profile. Yeah, so the first speaker, Dr. Pradytia Putri Pertiwi. Okay. Our first speaker, Dr. Suzanna Awang Bono. She is a senior lecturer in the School of Social Science, University Sains Malaysia, and her expertise are in the topic of personality, abilities and assessment, psychological methodology, social and community psychology, attitude, and group behavior. And there is some of her research and selected work. The first one is about evaluating the educational value of the reef stakes card game for coral reef conservation, an intervention study, and scientists speak up. Search impact trust in health advice across 5 countries, and also reassessing existing value belief norm model by taking into account emotion in mitigating climate change behavior among Malaysian flood victims and non-flood victims. And our second speaker, Dr. Pradytia Putri Pertiwi. She is a lecturer in the Faculty of Psychology, Universitas Gadjah Mada. Also now currently serve as the Vice Dean in Research, Community Service and Cooperation. She is featured in Indonesian Women Leaders in DRR. And there is some of her ongoing research and selected work. The first one, unpacking collaboration in disability inclusive disaster risk reduction. Are we doing it the right way? And also vulnerability and social cohesion in shared space. Okay, we will first begin with our first speaker, Dr. Suzanna Bono. She will talk about psychological response in crisis, emotion and resilience. Dr. Suzanna, the floor is yours.
Hello, okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Kabare, where's mangan? A bit of Javanese. Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity to be given this opportunity to give a talk here in UGM. I'm truly honored. Thank you to Pradytia and Yusrifan, Luciana for organizing, and Mbak Woro. Where is she? Not here. Okay, but thank you so much. So today I'm going to talk about psychological responses in crisis, and I'm going to focus on emotions and resilience. Now, let me see. Oh, it doesn't work, I think. Oh, yeah, it's okay. So this is the outline of my talk. First, I'll talk about why emotion and resilience matter in crisis. And then second, the psychological adaptation in crisis. And I'll talk about the studies that I've done in collaboration with other co-researchers. The first study would be on emotions and climate behavior among flood victims. Second is the family resilience during COVID-19 pandemic. Then I'll talk a bit about certain examples from Southeast Asia. and then a general discussion and future directions. Okay. I think because it's a screen, it won't go. Okay. So now, why does emotion and resilience matter in crisis, right? In crisis, we cannot run away from emotions, yeah? Emotions such as fear, worry, they test our emotional and psychological limits, right? So in this time of crisis, our personal emotional regulation, resilience are critical, okay? It's critical for adaptation, yeah? So here I focus on two types of crisis, although different: health, COVID-19 pandemic, health crisis, and also environment crisis, the floods in Malaysia. But what boils down to these two crises is how we use emotions and resilience to cope with the crisis and adapt our behavior throughout this crisis, during this crisis, yeah? Okay. Now, to understand more about how people navigate crisis, I'll touch upon these three aspects: emotions, resilience, and adaptive behaviors. So emotions such as fear and worry are inevitable in crisis solutions, in situations. While this emotion viewed as negative, it may also be motivation to change your ways to cope, yeah, through the crisis. And resilience, which is the ability to bounce back, yeah, emerges from both individual capacities and social systems like family and community support. So not individual, but your community, your family, the people surrounding you, yeah. And adaptive behavior, this emotion and resilience leads to adaptive behavior, yeah, and it helps with coping strategies and also pro-environmental action when we talk about floods, mitigation behavior, yeah. So in this talk, I'll focus on this equation. Emotional response equals to behavior outcome. Coping also will determine your behavior outcome. Right, next. Okay, so this is my first study that I'll be presenting today. It's in collaboration with Winnie, my master's student present here today, myself and two other co-researchers from Universiti Sains Malaysia, Prof. Mageswari and the Dean of School of Social Sciences, Associate Prof. Shaharuddin Samsurijan. And this study is on emotion drivers of climate action among flood victims. Next, please. So now, as we shift our focus to environmental crisis, it's important to understand the role of emotions in shaping how we respond to climate-related threats. Fear actually is one of the strongest emotion we can experience, yeah, in the context of climate change. It often arises from the perception of threats, like the severe impacts of climate change, and can drive adaptive behavior. Okay, but fear isn't always paralyzing, yeah. It drives people to act and think about future behavior, all right? Similar to worry, similarly, worry about threats to personal value aspect of life, such as nature, can lead to proactive climate mitigation efforts. Now, we look at the value belief model. Okay, this brings us to the VBN model by Stern. Now, in the VBN model, it has values, belief norms, which influence our pro-environmental behavior. But what is missing is they do not account for all these emotional factors, such as fear and worry, which plays a role, yeah, during this crisis. So we, the researchers thought why not test this emotions in this model? Next, please. So if you can see, this is the framework. The blue is the original model of the VBN, okay? And then so we add on fear and worry into the mix of this framework. So fear and worry, we hypothesize that it mediates values and environmental behaviors. Okay, next, please. Now, this is the objectives of this study. There are more objectives, but I shorten it to two. First is to investigate whether fear and worry towards climate change mediate the relationship of the values, biospheric, altruistic, egoistic, and climate change mitigation behavior in flood and non-flood victims. And second is to assess the predictive power of the VBN model when we account for fear, all these emotions. Next, please. Now, this is the methodology. It's a cross-sectional design whereby we go down to the field to question people with our questionnaire. We aim at, we had 382 flood victims and 390 non-flood victims. It was random and snowballing sampling. And our study location are at two states, Pahang and Selangor in Malaysia. Why? Because they were the worst hit states in December 2021. Places that didn't flood before suddenly flooded. So we went to these states and collected data there. So inclusion criteria, we had flood victims 18 years above, Malaysian, and affected by the December 2021 flood. Non-flood victims 18 years above, Malaysian, but no flood experience. So that's the difference between the two groups. Exclusion criteria, not willing to provide consent and diagnosed with psychotic disorder. Next, please. So these are the materials. Sorry, before. Oh yeah, okay, this one. These are the data that we collected: demographic, values, belief, norm, fear, worry, emotions, and behavior. Next, please. So the first objective is to see whether fear and worry mediates the values and climate change mitigation behavior. Next, please. Okay, so here we see that BV, biospheric value, fear mediates biospheric value and climate change mitigation behavior. However, this was significant for non-flood victims, but significant for non-flood victims and not significant for flood victims. So we do not read this mediation effect. However, the worry mediates egoistic value and climate change mitigation behavior, and significant between flood and non-flood victims, whereby it's higher for non-flood victims compared to flood victims. Yeah. Next. Next, we see the predictive power of the VBN model here. So we can see that the Q-square values are all above 0. So the model for flood victims and non-flood victims, when we add fear and worry, is it's strong. The predictive power is high. Yeah, it's sufficient. Okay, next, please. So what does our findings tell us? First, worry fully mediates AV, altruistic value and climate change mitigation behavior. Worry partially mediates EV, egoistic value and climate change mitigation behavior. Now, this may suggest that flood victims, have direct personal experience with impacts of climate change. Now, this direct impact makes the threat more immediate and tangible. And when that makes them more immediate and tangible, it intensifies their worry. When they intensify their worry, so that makes it a central motivator for action. Climate change mitigation behavior, yeah? Now, what about worry among non-flood victims? Now, non-flood victims, they have not experienced worry. They have not experienced flood, but they still worry of what, they still worry about the broader impact, okay? Their worry is less intense than flood victims because it's more tangible, right? Flood victims, they have experienced it before, but non-flood victims have not experienced it before. But it's less intense, but their behaviors are still influenced by a combination of intrinsic values, because we look at values here, and they're concerned about climate change. So this indicates that their values directly guide their behaviors along with worry. So that's worry among non-flood victims. What about fear and non-flood victims? Now, fear partially mediates values and in climate change mitigation. Now, non-flood victims might be more influenced by fear as they imagine the potential, they imagine potential impacts and the unknown of the flood, yeah? Now, fear of the unknown and potential future disaster can drive this mitigation behavior. But their values also play a significant role in guiding this action, yeah? Now, fear versus worry. When we compare them, worry is more chronic, yeah, persistent and linked to future threats. However, fear is more immediate and it's an acute response to perceived threats. Yeah, flood victims having direct experience may have transitioned from an acute fear response to a chronic stage of worry, making worry a more significant mediator. So from this study, we can see worry is more significant than fear. Yeah. Next, please. So there are limitations to this study. First, we only explore fear and worry. Other emotions can be explored. It was only a cross-sectional study, so a longitudinal study would benefit. Because it was a cross-sectional study, we couldn't investigate the causal effects of the mediators into the relationship between values and climate change. Thus, experimental studies is warrant to look into the causal effects. Next, please. So our findings reveal that the differential mediation effects of fear and worry on climate change mitigation behavior, highlighting importance of distinguishing between fear and worry. This differentiation is crucial actually because personal experiences significantly influence how this emotion drives behavior. Now, by understanding this distinct role of fear and worry, our research contributes to the theoretical understanding of the VBN model as a whole. Yeah, we can refine the VBN model by putting in emotions. Yeah, and finally, there are practical implications of developing effective communication and policy strategies. Next, please. Now, we've talked about emotional experiences, yeah, particularly fear and worry, that can influence individual responses to climate-related crises. Now, but crises don't affect individuals, okay? It also challenges families and relationship at their core. So, for example, here now I'll talk about the COVID-19 pandemic, whereby Malaysian families face prolonged uncertainty, stress, and disruption to their daily life. So this study too is actually a feasibility study on family resilience during COVID-19 pandemic. And this is the research team. Researchers are from Universiti Malaya, Help University Malaysia, Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia, Universiti Malaysia Sabah, and myself, yeah, from University Sains Malaysia. Next, please. Now, resilience, when we talk about crisis, whether health crisis or natural disaster, we're referring more about bouncing back, okay? According to WHO, okay, they define resilience as the dynamic process of adapting well, responding individually or collectively in the face of challenging circumstances, economic crisis, psychology stress, trauma, tragedy, threats, and other significant sources of stress. It can be described as an ability to withstand, to cope, or to recover from the effects of such circumstances, and the process of identifying assets and enabling factors. Okay. Now, the emphasis is placed on the importance of creating resilient communities and the idea of helping people to help themselves. All right. So, when we look at couples and families, research have shown through suffering and struggle, often emerge stronger, more loving, and more resourceful through collaboration and mutual support. Every family has the potential to build resilience in dealing with challenges, turning adversity into a catalyst for family growth. Now, according to Walsh, family resilience is defined as the family's ability to withstand and rebound from disruptive life's challenges, strengthen and more resourceful. Yeah. Next, please. So this is the former Walsh model of the family resilient process theory. Yeah. This theory composed of 3 domains: communication and problem solving, belief system, and organizational patterns. It goes through 9 key processes, 3 in each, as you can see. I won't go through this, but can we go next? Yeah. Now, as we all know, the COVID pandemic, again, not only bring a public health crisis, right? Okay, I only have 5 minutes more. Okay, well, it's okay. Okay. First, thank you. Okay. First, the pandemic led to a significant rise within marriages and significant rise in stress within marriages and families. The emotional strain was further intensified by prolonged time spent at home. Now, this prolonged time spent at home can be either they take it as quality time to be spent together, or it is the other way around, you know. Some ends up in, you know, domestic violence, yeah, because of the stress of parenting. Where school closure, there are school closure, kids stay at home. Parents not only have to work from home, but they have to do house chores and they have to take care of the kids. Not only take care of the kids, but teach their kids, you know, lessons because they can't do it in school. Sorry. Excuse me. Okay. So parents have to juggle multiple roles. Okay. Besides that, factors like boredom, loneliness, having children at home also raise tension and risk of violence, domestic violence. Yeah. Next, please. So this is the intervention module. This intervention module is based on the former Walsh theory. So we've got the 3 domains on the left, and then the sections is divided through using the 9 processes. Yeah. So it's a mixture of activities, yeah, breathing exercises, meditation, teaching them how to be resilient, how to given situation scenarios, and how to deal with it. Yeah. Next, please. This takes 3 hours in total. Okay. These are the demographic. We had 40 respondents. 40 respondents divided 50% male, female. Yeah, a majority. Majority 36 to 50 years old. They were mostly Malay Muslims. They had a majority of 2 to 4 children, but their monthly income is lesser than 3,000. Their household monthly income is lesser than 3,000. Working in private companies, most of them work in private companies, and their education highest is tertiary high school. Okay, so this is the pre-post test for the Walsh questionnaire. Yeah, so we tested the belief system, organizational pattern, and communication. And pre-post shows a significant difference. These 3 domains increase after the feasibility study. Yeah, next. So does the mental well-being scale. The mental well-being of the respondents increased significantly after the intervention. The relationship quality, perceived relationship quality also increased. However, parenting the online generation did not increase after post-intervention. Next, please. So now, this study shows that this study is an evidence-based foundation, but also it's relevant because it integrates specific element of the pandemic experience, like prolonged confinement, school closure, work-family overlap, into a structured intervention designed to support family wellness. Now, beyond just delivering this intervention, we also aim to contribute to new knowledge, which incorporates specific elements, how family function during and after the pandemic. This knowledge is vital, not only for psychologists and researchers, but also for policymakers and community leaders. So the goal is to help build resilient families in the post-COVID era by strengthening the emotional, relational, and structural foundation of family system. And looking forward, the data and insights from this study could inform the development of new national family policies, one that's grounded in lived experience and can be implemented across Malaysia. So in the next slide, building family resilience in times of crisis, these are recommendations. First, we strengthen community-based family support programs. Second, establish family resilient resource centers. And third, develop intervention through cross-sector collaboration. All right, next, please. So these are examples from around the world, Southeast Asia in focus. These are how people cope in natural disaster, environmental disaster. So in Indonesia, Jakarta's residents, particularly those in informal settlements, have developed community-based flood adaptation strategies, such as building makeshift barriers, neighborhood water monitoring. In Vietnam, where rural areas are especially flood prone, communities have prepared themselves with early warning system, educational programs, to be more emotionally and practical for emotionally prepared and practical for disasters. In Thailand, climate-related anxiety, especially among youth, has sparked activism. This emotional discomfort has become a driver for climate education and pro-environmental engagement. Now, these regional examples show us that emotions like fear, worry, anxiety, don't just lead to distress, they can fuel action and connection and long-term resilience. Next, please. Now, coping with pandemic in Southeast Asia, in Indonesia, religious coping played a significant role. Many turned to prayer, spiritual communities, and also mobilized neighborhood-based mutual aid, or gotong royong, they call it, to help each other through tough times. Philippines, another example, has community kitchens and food banks set up as a way to reduce stress, yeah, and insecurity. So emotion support hotlines also became more widely available. Meanwhile, in Thailand, digital mental health services helplines were launched to support individuals experience anxiety and depression. So these are a bit of examples on how emotional adaptation is not only individual, but it's embedded in cultural practices and social structures that shape resilience in different ways. Yeah. Next, please. So this is the general discussion for my talk. So as we reflect on these two studies, we can see that, you know, from flood victims engaging in climate change mitigation behavior to families navigating to emotional weight of COVID-19 pandemic, yeah, it becomes clear that emotions are not just reactive reactions, they're active forces which shape behavior. Okay, and resilience isn't just an individual trait; it includes family and also cultural resources. Yeah, that we hold. For example, some families drew strength from spiritual practices and shared narratives of survival. Others lean on strong community ties or cultural tradition of cooperation. Yeah, so it's important that we find that worry isn't a negative emotion, but when it's acknowledged and managed well, worry can push people to a positive change. Yeah. And finally, one of the most powerful insights in the community level strategies really matter. Psychological intervention or public policies are more effective when they reflect how people actually live, feel, and support one another during crisis. So in understanding emotions, resilience, the community context, we can design better, more meaningful intervention for the future. All right, next. So future direction. How do we move forward? Okay, it's clear that emotion and culture must be integrated into how we develop crisis intervention. We should promote community-based resilient strategies, and there are a lot of room for future research, cross-country comparisons, longitudinal data, yeah. And Southeast Asia finally has deep cultural resources for resilience, whether it's spiritual practice, mutual aid tradition, or collective storytelling. These are powerful assets. So tapping into them can help strengthen both individual and societal capacity to face future crises. Okay, next. These are the references. We can skip this and the next two. That's it for my talk. Thank you so much for your listening ear. I hope you've gained something from this talk. Thank you so much for listening. Next. Last slide.
Thank you very much, Dr. Suzanna. It's such an insightful presentation, insightful lecture for us to learn from Malaysia, and it's very related with Indonesian context too, I suppose, yeah. Okay, so so after this, we will have the second speaker, and then we will have a discussion, Q&A, yeah. But so Dr. Suzanna have give us her email address. So if you have any inquiries in the future, you can contact her in susannabono@usm.my. Yeah, you may take notes for her email address. And I know that you are burning with question, but please keep your question for now because we will proceed to our second speaker. We would like to invite Dr. Pradytia Putri Pertiwi to the floor.
Thank you, Mbak Lucy. Thank you very much, everyone. So probably allow me to stand here because I prefer to presenting while standing. It's really such a pleasure to welcome Suzanna. Our first meeting actually quite interesting because we were at the conference in Bali last year, the International Association for Cross-Cultural Psychology, and we accidentally met at the snack table while during the break of the conference. Yeah, so saying hi to someone during conference, you never know what that opportunity will bring, yeah, to a broader collaboration. So really it's truly a pleasure, Suzanna, especially learning about your research, because I can see a lot of overlaps with my own research and also the PhD students here who are attending this session, who also researching about resilience, disasters, environmental issues in terms of crisis as well. So I'm really sure that we learn a lot from you, especially today. So this is my presentation. And this will be quite short because this research is still in the preliminary stage. I would consider this as the fourth example from the Suzanna's topic on psychological resilience, because I can also see the findings of this topic resonates really well with what the concept that Suzanna already delivered and positioned early in her talk about how emotion plays role in terms of crisis, how it moderates and also become the driver of resilience, for example. But this time, this is the case from Indonesia. So previously, we have cases from Malaysia context and also Vietnam as well. But now we are talking about the context in Indonesia, especially in Aceh, and with a particular community group, the Rohingya refugees. Yeah. So probably if you're not familiar with Rohingya refugees, so they are cultural groups, I would say, identity, Islamic cultural groups from Myanmar that has been historically receiving discrimination from in Myanmar context or Myanmar society. But the biggest event of displacement of Rohingya refugees was in 2017. That causes a lot of cross-border displacement from Myanmar to neighboring countries. Especially the biggest one is in Bangladesh, in Cox's Bazars. Now the Cox's Bazars camp, they host more than 1 million Rohingya refugees from Myanmar. So it is quite dense now in Cox's Bazar. That's why now Rohingya refugees also fleeing to another country. So it's multiple displacement. One of these countries are Indonesia. Yeah, so this is the experiences on vulnerability and social cohesion in shared space. Yeah, why I said we mentioned shared space because Aceh, when Rohingya refugee come, we already have also host community living there. So there's also internal dynamic social interaction between refugees and also the host communities. So that's probably what's a point that a little bit different from Suzanna's talk in terms of psychological resilience is also influenced by social interactions with host community. Now, next probably. So a little bit of background, as I mentioned earlier, in 2017, Rohingya refugees, the biggest displacement event happened. And then afterwards, Indonesia also receiving incoming Rohingyas. So actually, Rohingyas has also been arriving in Indonesia since 2000s, but the biggest influx was in 2023. So with around 1,543 Rohingya refugees arrive, especially that the port was in Aceh. So this is the largest influx since 2015. why they choose to leave Cox's Bazar. The push factor is the poor condition of Cox's Bazar at the moment. It is already very overcrowded, yeah, overcrowding population of refugees. So as I said, more than 1 million refugees in Cox's Bazar camps now. And then the increasing level of violence, kidnapping, even inside the camps, refugees are being kidnapped by, they said, terrorist groups coming from the host community and also from the Rohingya refugees themselves as well. And then when they kidnap this refugee, they ask for money. So not only feeling lack of security, but also threat to the economic capacity as well. Because when you are being kidnapped, then the kidnappers will ask for, you know, money from you to be able to release your family members, for example. And also because of the overcrowding, now they are facing a lack of resources. You can imagine 2017 is nearly 8 years ago. And this has been a prolonged displacement period where international aids might now already decreasing their level of services. Yeah, probably lack of funding already experiences. Then there are a lot of competition in getting these services there in Bangladesh. So this motivates Rohingya refugees to leave Cox's Bazar. On the other hand, there is also the pull factors, the motivating factors pulling them from Bangladesh. They always choose countries with majority of Muslims. So Malaysia and Indonesia becomes the destination, their next destination for migrating. Yeah. Why? Because they also have Muslim background. So they think with the Muslim countries or Muslim majority countries, they can practice their religious practice as well and getting the same value since they have also similar values as Muslims. Another pull factor is family reunifications. Probably their families already in Indonesia or in Malaysia, for example. So it motivates them to migrate. Economic opportunities or the hope of getting more resources, because as I mentioned earlier, in Cox's Bazar, it's competing for resources now because of the overcrowding. But of course, the process is not easy. To reach Indonesia, they told us that they need to pay someone to get them inside a ship containing around 200 to 300 people in one ship, a very big ship. And the journey through the sea using this ship, of course, it's a dangerous one. Usually it takes around 3 weeks until 1 month on the ship in the journey itself towards the destination countries. And also sometimes they're, you know, they're not, cannot directly reaching the next destination because they always consider the safe moments to land. Because sometimes if their arrival is detected by community or local government, for example, they might not be given permission to land. So the last news that I got just morning from one of our fellow Rohingya in Aceh, they tried to reach Malaysia, but then they were detained by the Malaysian authorities, so they're not given permission to land. So the period of the journey might be longer than that, depending on, you know, the opportunity to land. And then, of course, the legal and also policy barriers that I will talk in the findings. Yeah. So with this background, we were, next one, use. We were curious to understand the multiple displacement experience by these Rohingya refugees. How the displacement experience increase their vulnerability, for example. What factors influence that vulnerability condition of Rohingya refugees, because they're living in, I would say, a terrible situation, very lack of resources, for example, lack of decent living condition, for example. So we would like to know what aspects or how vulnerable are they at the moment in Aceh after the experiences of displacement in Cox's Bazar and then their journey to Indonesia. And then what's interesting, the second concept that we would like to understand is the social cohesion with the host communities. This was triggered by a lot of community or rejections that we saw from social media towards Rohingya. So we want to understand whether host communities or people living in the surrounding camps in Aceh, for example, do they have similar attitude towards Rohingya refugees as we read or learned from the social media. Yeah. Next one, Yus. So we conducted preliminary research. So UGM kindly give us a small funding to explore more about the problems about Rohingya refugees. Yeah. So this preliminary research specifically explored the vulnerability and social cohesion of Rohingya communities and the host community in Aceh. We engaged with 35 participants. So unlike probably Suzanna's research that are more quantitative, we engage more in qualitative way. So we did observations of their camps, their activities, and also their living situations. And we also conducted informant interviews, semi-structured interviews, and also FGDs. In total, we engaged with 35 participants, 15 Rohingya refugees, 17 host communities, and 3 members of a local NGO assisting these Rohingya communities. So these are examples of pictures that we took during our preliminary research. The FGDs with the host community on the left top there, and then on the right bottom is and also the upper right is the example photos of their camps at the moment. You can see even the camp situation, different camp has different living conditions. So on the right upper side is the detention center where you have a concrete building for the camp of Rohingya refugees, while the other camp has the temporary shelter condition with tarpaulin, yeah, and just covered by leaves or also tarpaulin there with bamboo as well. So we can see how different living situation there. Next one, Yus. So I mentioned the funding from UGM. So we work together with Universitas Syah in Aceh as well, the local university there, NGO, Yayasan Getanyo, and also we partner with partner university in Germany because we worked together previously also on a case study on Rohingya, but in Bangladesh. So we can compare also the living situation with Bangladesh and also Indonesia. So the method, we did qualitative descriptive study, observation, interview, and FGD. We developed the questionnaires ourselves from reviewing literatures and also documents. And we already completed the outputs. At the moment, we are developing a wider scope for research proposals that will be submitted to a donor from Germany, and we already produce learning videos, and also we plan to produce also scientific articles. Next one. So these are what we, the study location. So we visited two camps. So the Minaraya temporary shelter was previously a building for detention center building. And the Kule is more informal sites, as I mentioned. It's located by the sea, so it's really by the beach, sorry. Really hot there, a very warm temperature with, you know, a lot of sandy sand inside as the flooring. So it's really improper living situation, limited access to public facilities such as clean water, places of worship, and more. So what we found from this initial or preliminary research, next one, use. So I will start with, I'm not sure if this is quite clear, yeah, but the middle part, I would start there, is the tension. Probably I would quote a statement from one Rohingya refugees when we spoke to them. They mentioned that I already forget the feeling of living in peace, like, yeah. Because that statement, they mentioned that it comes from the previous displacement experience in Cox's Bazar, the journey through Aceh, you know, 30 days on a big ship with a lot of people that you might not know. And then what makes them also feeling not safe is the tension that they felt with the host community in Aceh. So there is this, not conflict, but it's kind of like a friction, yeah, friction because of different culture with the host communities that's and also they speak different language. So they have misunderstanding sometimes with the host communities, creating small tensions that makes them feel unsafe, yeah. But interestingly, in terms of acceptance from the host communities, in contrary to what we saw in the social media, actually Aceh community accept Rohingya refugees when they first arrive, because Aceh community, they have the local values of welcoming guests. We call it in Bahasa Aceh. Probably my student here from Aceh can explain the traditional value that you have, the Pemulia Jame. Intan or Mbak Hayun? Probably you can use mic because our participants on Zoom can also hear.
Pemulia Jame is an Ajanese culture and tradition to honor the guests, yeah, that coming to our mau bilang nation,
Yeah.
country,
Area, yeah.
to our area. So it's also the Islamic perspective that Ajanese people really stick to, and also become the part of the daily lives. So we should, it's not should, but every people comes from the outside. So it is the obligation for us to honoring our guests.
Yeah. It's not only on refugee context, but in daily lives, yeah. So Suzanna, if you come to Aceh, for example, Mbak Hayun and Mbak Intan will host you generously for 3 days with very delicious foods and a very welcoming attitude, I would say, honoring guests. So that's like the value of Acehese people, the Pemulia Jame. So if we think about rejection from host community, actually at the start, the Aceh community not, really accept Rohingya refugees. They even help because aside from Pemulia Jame, Acehese people also have the value of helping those who are suffering, or they have, I don't know, probably Mbak Intan can also explain, but you have this Laut, Panglima Laut principle, the sea general principle of helping people who are suffering in the sea. So including Rohingya refugees, they're, been there like 30 days of floating in the sea, for example. It's in their principle of helping everyone who are suffering. That's why at the start, they're very welcome and they give the space for them to live alongside and together with the host community. However, the tension begins because of the prolonged stay. Yeah. So in the first discussion with the Rohingya refugees, they mentioned, oh, probably I will stay here for like a week or 2 weeks, for example. But in fact, they live there now for more than 1 year because of the uncertainty of the refugee status and the access to go migrating to other countries is really uncertain from the government of Indonesia or from the international organizations. So the prolonged stay create the tensions of sharing resources because, oh, you've been here a long time, probably the local community themselves, they have limited resources to share with the host, the Rohingya refugees. So that creates tension between host communities and the Rohingya refugees. There are also concerns about the well-being. So these Aceh communities, who are the host communities, they are not a wealthy communities to start with. Aceh people themselves also experience their own internal conflicts, right? From the past political situation in Aceh. They themselves have the psychological trauma. They themselves have the experience of violence and conflicts. They themselves have the lack of resources. So with that already vulnerable condition, and they need to welcome outsiders and sharing resources, well, there is no actual support from the government for the host community. So that creates concern of their own well-being. So what happened with my family if I share my beras, rice, for example, or my kelapa for Rohingya? So there's this concern that creates the tension. There's also trust and suspicion because of different culture values, perhaps also miscommunications that then create the fear or lack of security. So this tension influence the level of social cohesion between Rohingya and host communities. There has been some or few programs initiated by international or local NGOs for Rohingyas, but sometimes they're not targeting social interaction with the host communities. Mainly because the setup of the camp itself. For example, if we go back to the picture here, in the detention center, no one can enter the camp without permission from the security. So that itself limits the interaction between refugees and the host communities. But in informal site, in Kule, the interaction is more what I call organic. Because there is no barriers, there is no strict security. So they can interact with the communities who are fishermen. So when the communities just come back from the sea, bring a lot of fish, for example, so the refugees will, come and see, oh, can I buy this? They communicate with body language, for example, yeah. So that is what interesting from the social interaction in the informal site settings, yeah. So there is a degree of interaction, especially in the informal sites. But the one in the detention center setup or camp that has strict security, the interaction has to be facilitated by NGOs. And sometimes it's not organic, and usually it linked to like a religious events like pengajian or buka bersama or a celebration of Indonesian independence, for example. So usually it links with that. And then there is this still, I think, a continuum of between acceptance and rejections. But when we talk to host community at that time, they're in the status of being neutral. As long as you can live there, as long as you don't bother us, it's okay. So that's the status now of the acceptance and rejection. So this is more in the neutral side. Yeah. And then the last one is the vulnerability. So all those experiences from past displacement in Cox's Bazar, those experiences interacting with host communities influences the level of vulnerability of Rohingyas. Yeah. First, the culture or religion. Their main concern is about I cannot practice or have the same access to practice my religion like back in Myanmar. We don't have imam. Imam is really mentioned repeatedly. We don't have imam here, someone who can guide them during the religious practice. And that's really important for them. And they see that as vulnerability. They see that as, oh, we're not practicing our religion well because we don't have the imam. Yeah. And then the identity status, the status of their becoming refugees itself need to be determined by the UNHCR, the Refugee Committee, UN Refugee High Commissioner. Not all Rohingyas already have the status of refugees. They need to sometimes apply, reapply, waiting for more than a year to have that status. Because if you have the status refugees, you can get additional benefits. For example, like access to cash assistance, or for children, you can have access to education, for example. So that's why they wish to apply for this refugee status from UNHCR. For Indonesian government, we don't provide any assistance at all. Yeah, so Rohingya refugees is under IOM, if not UNHCR. Psychological trauma, of course, from the displacement, the trauma baggage from a long time ago, the 7 years displacement, the persecution in Myanmar. They mentioned a lot of awful things the Myanmar government did with them, yeah, that caused them move to Bangladesh. And then in Indonesia, they said, when I asked them, do you feel your life is getting better here? They said, we're now feeling safer, but we're not going anywhere. They don't think their well-being is increasing, but it's like stagnant. Yeah, there is no difference in well-being aside from feeling safer. That's what they told us. And then, of course, the physical and social environment influencing their vulnerabilities, as we saw from the camp situations. And also now, a lot of international donors even cut the budgets. Even UNHCR now mentioned that they're no longer supporting refugees who are coming after 2018. So it is now become more difficult for them to leave without the support from international organizations. So this is our initial findings. And in terms of our research plan, we also seek to understand further about their adaptive capacity, because we think Indonesia is a transit country. Indonesia will not give nationalities status for Rohingyas. So they are here only for transit. So how these Rohingya refugees build up their adaptive capacity while they are in transit? They've been in Bangladesh for more than 7 years. They're now in Indonesia now around 1 year or so, and then probably they will move to another countries. So we'd like to understand their situation of how they can build resilience or adaptive capacity while they're in Indonesia. So I would probably, if you're interested, I can share the proposal with you, Suzanna, and you can give comments as well. That would be really interesting. So that's from me, Mbak Lucy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Pradytia, for the insightful. Yeah, please take your seat in the front. And we would like to invite Dr. Suzanna also to the stage before we begin our discussion session. Yeah. Okay, now we will proceed to our Q&A. We will open this discussion with 3 questions, maybe? Yeah. So please, if you have any question, you can raise your hand or comments. Yeah.
You can also share as well, because as I understand, students are studying resilience as well. Probably you might, share your difficulties or confusions. We have Suzanna here.
Maybe Mbak Intan can share your research about family resilience.
We have as well.
Hello, Suzanna. I'm Yuli Arinta. I'm a doctoral student here, and Ibu Ditya is my co-promoter. And I'm research about the resilience of a disaster volunteer. So I'm interested with your presentation topic because you are focusing on the victim, right? From the first research. And in my side, it's also the same topic that victims is also becoming a helper sometimes in disaster, right? They also experience about the negative feeling, fear, and worried. And sometimes in my findings, they build the positive feelings also. They become stronger when they help others. So that's my difference of my research with you. If I also research about the volunteer that they are also part of the victim, the flooding, earthquake in Cianjur. They also resident, they also community that facing as a victim, but also they are a community volunteer. So sometimes whether they've experienced about negative feelings, but they also building the positive feelings. We understand it post-traumatic growth, right? So, but I want to know about your research results on the first. You mentioned that you also see about the demographic, right? Variable. So is there any differences of youth or adult of experiencing the negative feelings or fear and worried on environment? Is there any differences?
For demographic, we didn't really go into demographic, right? We need to check the differences between the ages. We didn't focus on that.
But from the data, there's non-flood victims and flood victims. Actually, they have a differences in education, very big differences. Yeah. Maybe there's something that there's a limitation too, because the Pahang, we went there to collect the data. The Pahang, quite of them like just not getting the university standards. Yeah. For the non-flood victims, most of them at least like bachelor degree. Yeah.
So differences in education, we can
But
see.
we didn't like check it like deeper. But from the observation, we saw this. Yeah.
There's differences. But for age, we didn't check age. Yeah. I can see why you mentioned age because emotional maturity, right? We talk about emotional maturity. Perhaps the younger may feel certain way, may feel certain emotions that the older generation don't feel, or vice versa. Yeah, but I can see why you mentioned that. Yeah. Sure.
You make the intervention, right, for
Yeah.
the family resilience. I
Sure.
want to know, how do you develop the intervention module? Because my dissertation is action research, and I'm doing that.
So, but Yuli is a lecturer, but also very active in the Red Cross.
Yeah. So you're looking at developing intervention. So this intervention, first, of course, we read the literature review and we do a SWOT analysis, strength, weaknesses,
Yeah.
opportunity, threat analysis. And then we see what intervention are there in Malaysia for family resilience. And then we compare it to other countries and we see what's lacking and what we can do in Malaysia. And we also take into account our cultural context. So through the analysis, we develop the intervention. And the intervention is based on the Frommel-Walsh theory. And so we use the domains, the processes as a reference for the intervention module and sessions. Yeah. Correct. So usually intervention are based on theories, models, existing models. Yeah.
Thank you, Ibu
Thank you.
Julia, for the questions. Do we have another
Mbak
question?
Intan,
Mbak Intan,
perhaps.
please, Ibu Intan.
Well, at the first, the resilience variable or construct, I'm not interested in that variable.
Oh.
My research, my mapping for studies is start from the field when I saw lot of people who are living in the disaster-prone areas still struggling for the future threat, the crisis and disaster. I'm working from the field for about like six years, and I'm also got so many stories from the disaster survivor, how they struggling when disaster occurs. And it also start when I got a lot of information about the discrepancies of gender issues in the field. And after that, I'm starting to read a lot, and I think it is also good to explore more on the family resilience from the lens of the community or family living in the prone areas. But limited studies shows that for family resilience, only focusing on like father and mother, but not on cohesive units. So in my study, I would like to explore the concepts of family resilience in the context of disaster from the perspective of the families as a cohesive units. And also I want to explore more on the gender roles, because gender issues is also affected on the risk and the rate of deaths when the disaster occurs. So not only that, my study also want to highlight the existing gender gap that has resulted in inequality between men, women, and children, and how they roles distributed in the families. So this is the prevention. My study is resilience. It's not measure after the disaster occurs, but this is to the prevention's effort. So how the family resilience building in the cohesive units of families, and how the gender distribution amongst the families to overcome the future threats, disaster future threats. So it's in the qualitative methods, and with using the case study in the tsunami prone area in the Yogyakarta's location, Bantul especially. And also I'm interested when you using the Froma walls. Froma walls is known for family resilience theory, but also Anne Maston nowadays lots of her writing about the systemic multi-systemic resilience. And I would like to also explore from the field with the qualitative method. So as a cohesive, like your studies including family resilience, but the respondent is
families, spouses, parents,
spouses.
parents.
How so I would like to know more and explore more. How about the family resilience? It's not only for the spouses, but also including the children.
Yeah. That's very good. Thank you so much for sharing your research. It's actually very good. Yeah, and to build resilience among to resilience after, and to prepare for future crisis, right? Yeah, which is very good. Thank you so much for sharing in time.
Okay, maybe we can go through the online participants. If you have any question, you can raise your hand or type in the chat box. Okay. Do we have another questions?
Really? So there are Rohingyas in Malaysia. Yes. So
If there is no more question, okay, maybe we should conclude our session now, because I think we run out of time too.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. But if you have more question or further question, you can email Dr. Suzanna or Dr. Pradytia also. Okay, thank you so much. And before we conclude our session, we will have a photo session too, yeah? Okay, so first we will have the picture of two of our amazing speakers here first, okay? Listen up it. With the